They said that if they did like a real documentary at that time, it would have been too like X-rated for like the screen, for like 1965.
Oh, I've heard Ringo had a lot of orgies. Like, thank you. Thanks. Perfect.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
What's up, everybody? It's one fucking hour time. I'm Evan
Hi,
Husney.
Raymond.
I'm Evan Husney, and to my left, we got, as always here, Big T, Tom Fitzgerald. T, what's going on?
Oh, my God. We're back again.
Yes, we are.
To quote the Backstreet Boys.
Perfect reference for tonight. And to my right, we got Mr. Marcus Herring. Marcus, what's going on?
I thought it was Tag Team that was back again. Tag Team back again.
They're back again, too.
Okay, we're all back, right? We're back from last week. And shout out to last week's episode, by the way. We did one fucking hour on Joe, which was great.
I'm proud of us.
Me too. That was a good one. That was a really good one. Great film. Love getting back into the gems, digging into those. But I forgot something last week that I teased the week before, and I forgot to land, and there were comments, so I want to address it here real quick. Okay. So this is kind of a plug for last week's episode, one fucking hour on Joe, everybody. But remember, I was saying to you guys, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, I was at a party, a dance party that we had thrown for a film we were releasing, The Wolf Pack, if you remember, Tom. And Susan Sarandon came to the party, and we had a DJ and everything. She was dancing like crazy. She was having a great time, and there was that moment, when we're up at the bar ordering drinks, and I was just like, what am I going to? Should I say anything? I'd never say anything, but maybe I had a few drinks to say something, and I was like,
okay.
I'm a big fan of Joe, and
really?
Yeah, I did.
That's like the first thing you said?
Yeah, or something like that.
Hi, Joe lady.
Yeah, hi, Joe lady. And she was like something, I'm paraphrasing, and she said something like, oh, what, that low budget piece of crap? Or something like that. And
come on.
I know. And I was like, no, it's a great movie. It's awesome. And she's like, yeah, whatever. So
yeah, sorry, it couldn't be the Banger Sisters.
Yeah,
actually, I'm not sure she's in that, but
yeah, sure,
she's in stuff like that.
Oh, okay, whatever. But anyway, that was just a fun little Joe run-in that I had at one point. Amazing. So
wow, man.
But you know what? It's not Jovember, guys, anymore. That was last week. We're moving on to bigger and better things. What is tonight? Tonight, episode 121 of the show. Very exciting. This is our Thanksgiving episode, everybody. And what are we doing? We're doing our first Beatles flick. We're doing Help tonight. Damn. So,
you mentioned Beatles, so it's why I watched The Help with Emma Stone.
Yeah, that's what we were supposed to do, right?
Whoops.
Oh. So anyway, no, we're doing Help. Fuck that shit. We're doing the Beatles, Help, our first Beatles film. And Tom, that is because Thanksgiving is sort of now the de facto time for
for Beatle drops, as I call them. I don't know if there's a plan, a strategy, or something. I see dropping something big during the holidays, while all of America is like the day after Thanksgiving, just like sitting around. It's like watching football kind of thing. So sure. Apple/Disney Plus or whatever has for a long time now, maybe since 2020, been doing all these big Beatle drops. So I just noticed that it continues. It's on this Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, and I'm personally excited. It sounds like a really good one. Executive produced by Martin Scorsese. It's Beatles 64. Now, cards on the table. Honestly, we are now being sponsored by Disney Plus. So this is a synergetic. Yeah, this is a synergetic sponsorship deal. So, I just want to be upfront about that. Okay?
We got to be transparent with the viewer.
This is a It's a Disney Plus
Show.
presentation.
Right. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
wonder what next year's going to be like. Yeah, like you guys have a wish list.
a
like,
new
for
album,
me,
AI album, maybe.
AI album.
Yeah.
I kind of hope
There's
that
a lot
someone
to-
takes the dailies from like Magical Mystery Tour.
Oh,
and
that would be
turns
cool.
into something.
Sure.
Yeah, Magical Mystery Tour Teardown and or some kind of huge yellow submarine, like something like an
Sure.
8K or something. I don't know.
What,
and without
what about
tapes.
Carnival of Light? Right?
Well, that's Sonic, but who
What
knows?
was it last year? Sonic
no.
Now and Then.
Well, that's true. That's true. No, I know what it might be. Magical Mystery Tour in 8K.
Oh,
They might, they might do that
right.
because they are beginning to, hit the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, totally.
But
totally. But guess what? So 'tis the season. This is going to be our BBD for sure. So this is our BBD. I'm very excited. Big Beatle drop is happening here tonight. But before we do that, I think we got to tell the good people just about the 1 fucking hour Patreon. So 1 fucking hour Patreon is where you can sign up right now if you want to support the show. It's the best way to support the show. It's just $5 a month, and you can sign up at patreon.com/1 fucking hour. Get instant access to our bonus eps, our audio commentary tracks, and 24 to 36 hour advanced access to every episode that we do. Very exciting. That's the best part, I think. But we're going to be doing a new bonus episode here. Maybe next week or something, we're going to squeeze it in. But it's going to be Beatle themed. Marcus, I don't know if you were clued in on this, but we're doing a Beatles themed bonus episode where we're going to do a show and tell. That means we're going to show, audio. We're going to do some, live listen reaction and some Beatles ephemera in our collection if you have any or anything. So
deep cuts, listen, watch,
DVDs. Yep.
And maybe some in hand kind of show and tell business if we have any.
Yeah.
Sweet collectibles. Beatles all day.
And since Apple would wipe that shit from YouTube in a fucking second, the only way you'll be able to watch that is up on the Patreon. So patreon.com/1 fucking hour is where you can get that. And pretty exciting.
Patreon
stuff.
has become a safe space,
It is.
for things like this.
It is.
That's true.
But it's also, you can also get our bonus content on YouTube if you want to keep it all there. Just click on our homepage on YouTube, our homepage channel, find the join button, click that, and become a Momen of the channel. And same price,
I like
same
that
perks.
remix.
Yeah.
Dropping that moment on this beat.
And it's same price, same perks, same benefits. And so we appreciate the support nonetheless. Whatever you decide to do, we appreciate it. Thank you very
for
much.
Sure.
So,
So, I was just thinking. So this is the impetus of doing this. But I think just to be clear, because I don't know if it's been established quite. We do film obviously on this podcast. We're also big music heads individually in our own way.
Yeah.
And I'll just put it this way: we could be doing a music podcast almost easier than this
Probably
podcast.
should have.
You probably should have. Yeah, it's true.
I don't agree, but specifically with music, because we have touched on music here and there, Limp Bizkit over here, and Metallica over there, right? But but we all are big Beatle heads in our own way as well.
Yeah.
So it's high time to address that. Shout out to Edon, by the way, my buddy out here in Brooklyn. Another big bee head.
Yeah.
So and there's people even in your extended family.
We could have had him on. He might be watching right now and upset we didn't call him. Maybe we should have. I just thought of that now. So if you're watching, I'm sorry. We'll get you on the next one. I swear.
Maybe
I
on
swear.
the bonus.
Perhaps. Yes.
That's actually a really good idea.
That would be a dope idea.
All right, we're doing a show here. So, but that's the thing. It's like we are quite into the Beatles. Just speaking for myself, it's been since I was like 8 years old or something, and I saw Help actually, and then I heard Revolver at a friend's house, and my mind was really, really blown because I came for Yellow Submarine. But I stayed for Tomorrow Never Knows.
Yeah, I knew.
Because when I heard Tomorrow Never Knows, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
These are the guys who did Yellow Submarine over here.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, in my head, there's like tornadoes of like Wizard of Oz birds and stuff. Like,
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, fuck, dude.
Great shit.
So Beatles forever. That's all I'm saying.
All right. So, so we're talking about the film Help, but of course we're going to touch on other things in the Beatles verse here.
Yeah.
But I think we should get the show on the road. You guys ready to do that?
Let's go.
Okay. So here comes the clock. 3, 2, 1. All right. So Help. Just going to read this plot synopsis for Help because Honestly, I'm going to be straight up real quick. I didn't grow up with this film, so I didn't watch this film a lot. I definitely parts I remember as it was all kind of coming back to me when I saw it when I was super young. But I didn't grow up watching it repeatedly and forgetting completely about the circumstance, the plot, if you will, of this film is very amusing. So, okay, here we go. Help. In the follow-up to their successful debut musical, A Hard Day's Night, the Beatles once again offer up a melding of song and slapstick. The murderous Eastern cult of Kailil discovers that its sacred sacrificial ring is missing. Ringo, drummer of the Beatles, has it. Sent it by a female member of the cult who is supposed to be sacrificed as a gift to Ringo. High Priest Clang, Anmi, Buta, and several cult members leave for London to retrieve the ring, but after several attempts fail to steal it back. Ringo then finds the ring is stuck on his finger. He finds that the ring is stuck on his finger, and after a confrontation in an Indian restaurant, learns that if he does not return the ring soon, he will become the next sacrifice. It's a race against time and across the world, with John, Paul, and George trying to protect their friend while they're all being chased not only by Clang and his minions, but also by an obsessed scientist, his assistant, and the chief inspector of Scotland Yard. Will Ringo be saved, or will he be sacrificed?
My money's on sacrifice.
That is the film. So Help.
Sacrifice.
So where should we start with this, Tom? Where do you want to go from here?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, like we were saying, we're kind of generally talking about the Beatles here, and the entryway is through the specific film Help. Help is the follow-up to their big guy, which was A Hard Day's Night. Now, here's the thing about A Hard Day's Night. Richard Lester's film from 1964. This film and the Ed Sullivan appearance, and them and all these the releases they had, and the soundtrack of A Hard Day's Night, actually, we're part of this tidal wave that created Beatlemania, and it captured the imagination globally. It wasn't even Elvis. Like, there's popular, but then there's this, because they were totemic and representative of like a new era. Haircuts, sound, the way they talk, their attitude, and all of it was beautifully addressed in this perfect film, A Hard Day's Night, which also on its own terms as a film is actually really cool and a real classic, and maybe we'll cover it later on. And we were deciding not to quite do this one because I was thinking what's cool about this follow-up, Help, is that it's similar in that, Richard Lester's back with the Beatles a year later. Yeah. But what's funny to me is that it's, I don't know, I hear from people who were alive at that time. Like my mom was telling me, like JFK was just assassinated. Okay, this is November, right around now. Yeah. 1963. And it did bum out the nation in all kinds of ways. I don't even quite understand, but it was a huge cloud. But then it was like 3 or 4 months later that these crazy guys were on Ed Sullivan. And here's another thing. It really feels like everybody. My mom watched it, Yeah. She was a mom, wasn't a teenager. Yeah. And like everyone seemed to watch that Ed Sullivan, and it made a huge impression on like everyone. Like there was less crime, that kind of thing when they were on. Yeah. It was crazy. So anyway, so that's 64, but it's still like black and white, most of media. Hard Day's Night is black and white. And Hard Day's Night, because it's filmed in 63, not even 64, it felt a little bit like it had almost a foot and a half in the earlier 60s, like their clothes. Yes. But what I'm saying is distinct from just 12 months later with this film, Hard Day's Night. Help. I wanted to get into that, and this is where I'm opening up with everybody. Is it's full color, and it's not just full color, but it's crazy, like color porno. Yeah. Like the color red is everywhere, and it's just so gorgeous. And it's so considered color. And Marcus and I will talk about that in a second, like how they really considered color. So it's not just in color, but it's like in glorious color. And it's also informed by pop art. Yeah. So it's the most popular pop thing in the world, the Beatles, addressing the more underground world of pop art, experimental film, Andy Warhol, and all that stuff. And it's a great confluence, and it's of course was a huge hit. And just a side note, I always think at every point the Beatles, every move they made, everyone thought like, well, they're about done, right? Like they're going to wrap it up. Like no one's going to even remember these guys in 12 months. And this was another. So every year it'd be like that. Like Should they throw in the towel? 1965 wasn't quite 64. So anyway, but what I'm saying is like they came back really hard in 65 with this film, but also what they were doing, and the music was just getting better and better and better and better. It's in the film. A lot of it help soundtrack. Help soundtrack outside of the film is a great record of the Beatles.
Totally.
So that's why I wanted to address it kind of, because it's just getting long-winded, but I'm just saying to the point here. This, to me, this film's existence is the beginning of the quote-unquote 60s. Mm-hmm. Not just in film, but just in everything. You know, the switched on, the groovy, the mod, like it's all here. And Hard Day's Night, which is a very cool feel, is slightly different, and it's an evolution from that with help here. Yeah,
no, totally. Marcus, you going to say anything?
Well, I mean, all that's. I'm 100% on board with all of that. And it's also just like personally, and I think for Tom too, like it was sort of my introduction to the 60s, and to the Beatles. I also saw this at a young age before I even knew what they were exactly. We had this VHS tape at home. I watched it over and over and over again. I thought that they did live like that. I thought they lived in a house that's where it's like 4 different entrances.
I love that.
It's the same house, so they all live together.
Yeah.
I have the sound, the dialogue is burned into my brain. Like, it's a fiendish thingy, and like up, 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 up. I hear that stuff. I probably quote that stuff all the time. The sound effects are burned into my brain. The intermission, bird sound effect is burned into my brain. There's so much of this film that is just in there, girlfriends, high school, whatever. This film was a huge introduction to my passion for the Beatles, and how I met people that were other Beatles fans and led to other, learning more about them and all this stuff. It kicked me off into becoming a huge Beatle junkie, anyway.
Yeah. So. And watching it for me, the first time, and what probably might as well have been the first time, it is kind of interesting to look back to, and just knowing how, phenomenal their, popularity was, around this time. But the fact that they were so also suited for a movie like this, for a wacky sort of comedy, which is pretty weird, because no other band at this time could really inhabit that. I feel like, it's like the Rolling Stones, forget about it, to be able to do a movie like this.
They've got a different thing.
They do,
but the sulking and the stockiness and the strutting,
Yeah, but then this Beatles, is like a general admission sort of family film in a way that anyone can watch, and it's mass market, and it works, and it shows this other side to them, that they're not super serious. They're goofy. They probably grew up as fans of a Laurel and Hardy style humor or something. So there's probably that nostalgia there, or whatever. And so it's interesting.
Yeah.
No, I know. Well, I was thinking about the trajectory of the Beatles as comedians, and it's amazing because it happens, of course, in Hard Day's Night. They're hilarious. But even right at the press conference when they land at JFK to do the Ed Sullivan Show in New York in early '64, they're just going. They're like, how do you find America? And it's like, you turn left at Greenland.
Are you a mod or a rocker? Neither. I'm a mocker.
Yeah, it's what the fuck, dude? Because they really are. I mean, some of that's scripted
dry
for Hard Day's Night, but if you look at the footage of the press conference in the airport, is what I'm saying. That's off the cuff, and they are funny. All of them.
Goofy. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ringo has this great personality, and George had a very dry, cool wit, and of course John's great, of course, and Paul's goofy and fun and cute. So what I'm saying is it's not a given, like you're getting at, Evan. It's not a given, you're a big pop group,
right?
Like the Who.
No,
the Who are fucking hilarious.
No,
Daltrey, with he's zippy. Roger Daltrey's like a fucking drooling, like street tough kind of guy. Maybe Keith Moon's kind of fun, actually.
Sure, he could have been
but
there.
But not Pete
Tudor
Townsend.
Motels.
But not Pete Townsend.
No.
Or I was doing a thought experiment myself. It's like, oh man, Procol Harum is fucking hilarious, dude. Dude, Procol Harum when they get going. No, that's not. It's not a given. Is all I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah,
So what I'm saying is, so the Beatles could have been popular because of their incredible talent.
Yeah.
But bonus, they're hilarious. That's not making it or breaking it, but it's just this added surprise bonus.
Right. And there are other bands who made other rock and roll films before this, like Elvis or Cliff Richard or whatever. But even right during this time, Jerry and the Pacemakers have their own
Oh,
movie
yeah.
from '65. It's called Ferry Cross the Mersey. You know, but it's like it's a similar kind of.
Oh,
they're going
Herman's
for a
Hermits
similar
had a
kind of-
movie, you know.
The Dave Clark Five.
La
had one,
Bamba guy, didn't he have a movie? He had a movie, right?
I don't think so.
Well,
no,
Los
but
Bravos. Did you mention that?
I thought he did.
well, like Herman's Hermits and you know, had movies, and they're all that's a little weird because they're all trying to do A Hard Day's Night, and they're not
Right.
as talented on all fronts. But
Yeah.
but what you're saying too, to the point is with A Hard Day's Night and now Help and Richard Lester being so innovative.
Yeah.
As a filmmaker, it just sliced right through all the corny convention
Right.
of things that were more inspired by the dumb Elvis movies.
For sure, the pairing of Richard and the Beatles together. But like you said, the interesting, the Beatles aren't great actors. Like people say that a lot, but their charisma comes through
Sure.
so much, and their brotherhood, their camaraderie comes through so much. You know, they had been a band, like those three core guys, you know, not Ringo, but they'd all been a band since '58. It's
crazy.
together. You know,
Yeah.
Paul and John since '57. So they had a
Quarrymen.
long career of like getting to know each other and being brothers basically before and traveling around the
Being
Hamburg
kids.
and
I
all
mean,
that.
being kids too. I mean, pretty
Right.
much.
How about this? I got being crazy 19-year-old teenagers on like German accelerated amphetamines, doing like 5 shows a night. You know, it's so weird about the Beatles because they were like leather jacket wearing speed freak tough guys who
So
played like
cool.
sped up 50s rock and roll.
Yeah.
Before they got cleaned up by Brian Epstein. You know,
Right.
which is cool and worth it, and they didn't really get neutered or anything like that. But it's just funny to think that they were kind of like tough.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ringo, Lemmy of Motorhead said, "Okay, John, Paul, George, yeah, those guys. That's a tough area, Liverpool. But the toughest, that's Ringo. He'll throw down. He will knock you on your fucking ass. Like that's Lemmy saying."
It's There's some old docs of the Mercy Beat scene from the time, and they're talking about people getting bloody and fights and stuff breaking out in the Cavern Club. Like it was
So
kind of
cool.
like rough punk.
You
show
know who
almost.
the mushy guys, ironically, were the Rolling Stones. 'Cause
Yeah.
they were like art school kids.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
But when you're from, like being from Liverpool is like being from like Baltimore, or something.
Birmingham.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
like twice as many people were on the dole in Liverpool as other places. There was like 80,000 houses that were in the area that people couldn't live in. They're just
Right.
like broken down, dilapidated. So it was kind of a rough and tumble. So just like
please.
when they had that camaraderie, right? And one of the great early observations and contributions of Richard Lester was when he assigned the writer Alan Owen for Hard Day's Night, and he like spent time with them. I guess he like wrote a play about Liverpool, so the Beatles were like, he's all right with me or whatever, but he spent time with them and kind of observed their camaraderie and how they talked together and made notes, and so then when they did Hard Day's Night, like it all sounds like ad libs, but it's written, but it's all based on things that they said and their individual characters.
Yeah.
He picked out that like George was the serious one, and Paul was, or like John's the cynical one, and Ringo's the kind of zany one,
Right.
But anyway, just that the fact that they observed their real characteristics and then tried to and incorporated that into the film, whereas I feel like almost everybody else tries to assign a character to somebody, like you're going to be the Ringo, you're
Sure.
the serious one, or whatever. Anyway, that's part of the recipe for success here. It's just bringing so much of their real lives.
speaking to the strengths, with both those films, and especially with Help, and I've heard this from other people. Like George is kind of the MVP, or like
Yes.
the surprise, like bonus. Like his raw delivery is like
Well,
really good.
I
yeah, he
didn't
can-
encourage that wink.
He can deliver a line,
Yeah.
Sometimes the other guys are and I think, Tom, you can explain why they are somewhat marble mouthed in this film, but
We'll get into that.
We'll get into that. But George is one that can really I feel like deliver a good line in this film.
No, I know. He's
And
got
it's not
a
often.
delivery. Because
Yeah.
like Paul, I think Paul himself would admit is like he's the weakest because he's like, I don't really quite have a command
Yeah.
of
He's out of his element.
Of trying to do a performance,
Yeah.
on camera. But George is an awareness of it. And then John's kind of in his own head.
Totally.
being
Yeah.
Always too. But it's all great. No, but to the point, please remember, everybody, when you watch Help now for the first time or you're seeing it again after the podcast, every time you see every Beatle, they are stoned out of their fucking minds. Thank you. That's what I was waiting for. So they're stoned out of their minds because number one, you got to think, okay, people smoked pot in the 60s, and it's hard to realize, but like, who knows what pot, quote unquote, was to people in the 60s? It was probably like a lot of shake and stuff and like kind of weak. But since you're the Beatles, it was probably nuclear grade marijuana, at least for the time, you know. So like they were like really profoundly like psychedelically stoned. Now, and here's the story, because here's, again, I'm trying to do this thing where it's like distinct from 64 to 65. So they release "I Want to Hold Your Hand" and they sing "I Get High." I can't hide, I can't hide, I can't hide. Right? Bob Dylan. They meet because Bob's got to meet the Beatles
at Buckingham Palace, right? Wasn't that when they were?
I'm not sure, but they got to meet. They got to meet, right? Because they're pop icons. So then Dylan had assumed they were going, "I get high, I get high," get high, and it was a wink, like, we're fucking out there, man. We're like weed smoking rock and rollers, and he's like, "Dude, I got to talk to these guys." So he immediately like gives them a joint. He's like, "The Beatles smoke weed. I get high. I heard it in your song." So like, no, we said hide. But they all get high, and and then they're off to the races, and they all take to pot majorly.
Yes,
and then a little later,
he introduced them to pot. Yeah, and they were like smoking when they got their MBEs, the member of the British Empire from the Queen or whatever. That they were in the bathroom at Buckingham Palace smoking pot before.
Wow,
right?
That's awesome.
Course.
That's awesome.
So what I'm saying is, so they weren't in 64 is what I'm trying to say. And then in 65, they would basically was wake and bake. Like I think Lennon was saying, like, please remember everyone when you watch Help. It's like we'd get up and the first thing we did was get high and then we'd stay high all day, especially because there's with that film, especially because there's the classic hurry up and wait thing of shooting, where it's like, so they were just like, I don't know. They're setting up the shot. It's like hours. Like, let's just get stoned, right, guys? So they do that. Also, they were starting to do LSD around this time too. Maybe not quite at the shoot,
right?
But maybe
next album.
But LSD, or
LSD's next second like, two albums.
LSD's in 65 as well, and maybe a little later than the shoot of this film. But do keep that in mind, and you can feel it in the film. And I think the inference, too, is that kind of everyone was stoned. I think Richard Lester probably got stoned. The film is very stoned. I was thinking about that.
It's stoner humor, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Not just that they're stoned, but the film is kind of like fucking Up in Smoke, Cheech and Chong.
Oh, it's like the
right?
the sense of humor, like of that tiny plane landing, and yet they get like the big stairs for it.
Totally.
It's like very stoner humor that way. But one thing I think just to point out, for those who may be not as familiar with the Beatles, it's wild that like the Beatles timeline, is so compressed. Everything they did is in a very short amount of time, and things are moving very fast.
There's like 6 albums a year in those first few years.
It's just nuts. So you can almost account for like every day of their life during that period. It's just so compressed, and things are.
They were
changing
also still touring in 65 because they gave it up in 66. So they're beyond busy, and that included this film. And I think that. One thing, they didn't really like Help very much because, unlike Hard Day's Night, because like you were saying before, Marcus, there was more direct input, like in the fleshing out of their characterizations through their real people with the screenwriter and stuff. But they felt, and this is, I get it. It's like they were feeling like we're extras in
our own
Lester
film. Right. Yeah.
And I was thinking about that when I was watching it again today, and I was like, it's true. But I think that's all part of the construction of things because. Again, let's stick with like thinking this is a Richard Lester film as much as a Beatles film.
Yeah,
and he's a wild guy. Richard Lester was very nutty, and you see that hinted at. It expresses itself in Hard Day's Night, but he's going completely crazy here. And I was thinking, Help compared to Hard Day's Night is sort of like Boogie Nights to Magnolia, but hit the thing.
Big but.
It's too late. But here's the thing. This movie is cool. Like, this is not Magnolia, but what I'm saying is everything was like first of all, they could do anything they wanted. Like, they could go around the world. Where in the world do the Beatles want to go to shoot their next film?
Sure.
So there's that.
Bahamas.
No expenses, longer shoots, bigger budgets, lots of cast, explosions. Like, there's all these explosions in this film.
Yeah.
Which is like a classic sign of like, you can just do like blank check filmmaking. It's like, oh, we want a row of tanks and a bunch of things blown up. It's like, because why not? And so
Yeah.
So it's an indulgent thing for Beatles and for Lester.
Huge contrast to Hard Day's Night, where that Lennon described as like a film about a car and a train and a train and a room and a room and a car.
Yeah,
and a cheese sandwich.
exactly. It's actually very. It's almost like a verite film. I think that Hard Day's Night has like verite influences, in a way. If you
It's
think
like a
about
fictionalized narrative of their life or something. It's almost like a fake doc of their
like
life.
a Penny
both
Baker
of them
thing.
are-
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Both of them are cool. It's just there's just a big difference. So anyway, that's another difference I noticed where it's a big indulgent thing. And then so Lester has a pretty vivid, wild imagination. So he's indulging, pot influenced or not. I'm not sure about him, but the zeitgeist at least is pot infused, if not directly. He's not directly smoking pot, but like he's like, you know what? Let's just have. How about Paul gets really small. And he starts wearing a gum wrapper, and he's like taking a bath in an ashtray.
Yeah.
And they're like, done tomorrow, 7 a.m. Let's go. It's like that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
Like crazy, fanciful things on the part of the director. And so, to the point what I was saying before, is the Beatles felt like they were kind of just like stand here, say that.
Oh yeah.
But then the big vision is of the filmmaker, which is cool because Richard Lester is a pretty interesting guy. So it's just in that way, it's a little more distant from the Beatles than you get in Hard Day's Night.
Right. Right. And Marcus, do you have the sort of 411 on Lester and how he comes into this equation or?
So he would, he's not British, which is, surprise.
I always
He's
forget
like from
that.
Philadelphia. So he was like a child prodigy who graduated high school at age 14.
Whoa.
And then like by 15, he was already working like on sets as like a stagehand and stuff. And then kind of like quickly moved into the director role because he, no one else knew how to do it. TV was so new back then, so there's lots of opportunity to get in there. I forget exactly why he ended up in England, but I mean, he was directing shows on British television in like 1956.
Oh, okay.
And they are pretty absurdist comedy, really clever, actually pretty funny today. Like when I was reviewing some of it, I was actually laughing. But Peter Sellers got a start on there. Spike Milligan was on there.
There's a Goon Show connection, right?
Right.
Yes, right. There's a
And now
show,
the Goon
show
Show-
called Fred, which was like the TV version of the Goon Show.
Right, but the Goon Show was, just to contextualize a little bit, was a huge influence on the Beatles, and also Monty Python.
Right.
So like it was sort of the Monty Python of the 50s, or Mr. Show of the 50s,
Right.
or whatever you want to call it now, whatever equivalent.
It would be really
crazy
one
absurdist
sketch might
humor.
be interviewing like a young couple who are sitting in some box seats, and there's just a normal interview, and then they're like, okay, and the interview's wrapped up, completely normal, and they back up, and then it shows that the people are sitting like in a pool, like in a hot tub or something, they just go underwater, and that was the joke. That's pretty trippy
totally.
for 1956.
Sure.
I know, dude. It was like it's prehistoric Eisenhower times,
right.
And it was about as hip as you got.
Yeah.
And
So, I guess when there was the producer Walter Shenson, who was kind of I think he was working with United Artists at the time, was pitching the Beatles on what kind of movie they were going to make, and he was like, it's going to be a comedy. So John said, okay, well you can produce it then. And then he's like, who's going to direct? And he's like, well, I'm looking at this guy Richard Lester who did the Goon shows on TV, and they're all like, get him, get
That's
that guy.
cool.
They were
That's
already
so cool.
big fans.
I love that. Yeah.
There is something like that sort of like absurdist hip, sort of humor, is the vibe here. And it does feel like, Monty Python, like we're like getting to Monty Python, that sort of feel with this movie. Because Monty Python was after this, obviously.
It's 69. In a
Right.
weird way, Help is the
Bridge.
middle section.
Right.
Right. The bridge between Goon 50s and basically the
go.
70s of Python.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to get maybe specific for a second about this style of humor we're talking about in Help. And how it's Richard Lester. It's a testament to Richard Lester, his point of view, and also the Beatles, though, too, and how it meets. It's specifically, I really caught this one. John is making a phone call in the middle of the night.
I have this in my notes, by the way. This exact scene.
I mean, it's a big scene, you know. So he's in his weird shrunken bed. Which
I
is
love
like,
that.
Like, yeah, I want that.
I want
Me
that too.
Yeah.
So he's dialing, and I counted how many times. So he's dialing, and even in Britain, you don't have to dial this much to make a call. Probably less than us. So he's dialing, and he's going ring, like it's a rotary dial. You know, it's old school. So it's like 7 rip 0 rip, 3 rip. He does it 12 times. And in the shot, there's no music. The shot is just on him, static, and he's not talking. Nothing's happening. He's just dial. And that is like, seriously, that's right out of like Vernon Chapman.
Yeah.
You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Vernon
Wonder
Chapman,
Chosen.
like
Yeah.
Wonder Chosen guy.
Yeah.
And I've talked with Vernon about this kind of thing. We were both talking about how Jerry Lewis would kind of go there.
It also is very Jerry Lewis too.
I
I mean, the whole thing has got to be majorly influenced by Jerry.
I was looking for direct references from Lester or the Beatles, but I didn't see that. But it's very Jerry Lewis. But that might be the most perfect Jerry-like surreal comedy kind of thing. It's also, again, reminds you of Mr. Show, like the sensibility of just him dialing like 14 times to, and by the way, of course, he's dialing to ring an alarm to wake up the other Beatles.
Right.
So
I love it. Yeah, just keep doing it till it's funny, and that's
right.
And the funny part is like, how long is it? Well, what happens with those kind of things that keep going is you don't know what's happening, and you're going, oh, now I am aware that this is longer than a regular dialing of a phone. And then it kind of goes down, and it's like, well, how long? What are we doing? But then that's when it gets really funny. So it's peaks and valleys. So it valleys on like, okay, this is going to go on for a while. I guess this is the joke. And it's like, oh, shit,
and
it's still going. Is this going to be the next half hour of my life?
It has that. But then it has like straight up kind of, slapstick gag humor too, with like the scene when they're in the bathroom, with the blow dryer sucking all the clothes up and everything. And that's obviously great.
No, well, how does that scene end though? Which is more insanity.
Yeah.
Which is right, exactly. It's George and John are just basically going back and forth, very stoner. Yeah. Like, did you say something? I said something. And then he's like, I'm gonna talk in me sleep. Yeah, and he's like, what'd your sleep just say, George? And it's like, what am I watching? And of course, another cool thing is there's like crazy nonsensical subtitles.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Like suddenly, like everyone laughs at Ringo.
It's like anything goes. Go ahead.
Part of that, I think, Richard Lester, he worked in live TV, so like they were making these comedy sketches live. So you're just sort of, there's a lot of spirit to do things in the moment. So and I think he was very open to experimenting on set. That's how they got all these great shots too in the movie. And the Beatles are really down to experiment and be patient. They didn't just walk on and like, okay, you've got 4 hours. You've got an hour to do it. They're down to try things, experiment, and be part of it. So that's like a really meaningful like contribution that they had that relationship together, where they're both like, let's try this, try that, try this.
And again, these are 4 guys who are totally off their gourds on marijuana. Yeah, I gotta say, we were talking about like an influence as a child. So this was on TV a lot when I was a kid. Yeah, and it really was the beginning of me understanding what the Beatles was as a thing. Yellow Submarine too, but actually, really, because they also were rerunning when I was a kid the Monkees TV show. Which is so an obvious ripoff of Help, specifically the movie Help,
Totally.
Right.
But anyway, when I was
the Monkees are doing like capers and stuff, the way that this is like a crime caper,
Well, they all live together.
They live together. Yeah.
Yeah, all that shit. No, but what I'm getting at is I remember even when I was a kid, I was like, this is pretty crazy. Because it was seeing Help and experiencing that is like I think you were saying, Marcus, it's like, oh, this is the 60s. Like things like this could happen. And this is what I mean. There's this weird intermission, this 8-second intermission.
I love that.
So a title card comes up and goes into part 1, intermission. Yeah. And then it's this insane 8-second loop sped up of John making it look like he's controlling a hopping sped up Ringo hopping up and down, but it's a loop. Like you're in the woods and it's like, it's like, what am I looking at? And it's not funny. Exactly. It's probably great if you're completely stoned.
I think that's what it is.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. That's not exactly humor. I'm not criticizing.
The timing of everything, the intermission, and it's so short, and you see the
it's a
intermission.
It's a bit.
No, but that specific image is just sort of like, because again, as a kid, it shone out like a bright light to me, like, wow, that's not even funny. Like, I don't know what that. I've never
That
seen
might be
anything
even
like
my
that.
favorite part. One of my favorite
Yeah,
parts.
I've never seen anything like it. It's like when I was a kid, like what even is this that exists? Like,
What's funny? I didn't really know about this till we started doing this episode, and I looked into some of Richard, his like short films and stuff. And you sent this today too, Tom, to us. The Running and Jumping and Standing Still.
Oh, yeah.
His short film from 1960. And that intermission feels like it could have been a
Totally.
scene in that.
absolutely,
Totally.
Yeah.
Like it's even got the same. I swear to God, it has the same bird sound effects. Like remember I told you the bird
Yeah.
sound effects are seared in my brain. He uses the same loop in his 1960 short film.
Get
he
that
uses in
bird
Hard
sound
Day's
effect
Night.
in there.
I know. Yeah, but it is like artificial sounding the bird loop because it's really fast, like cycling. It's very weird. And of course, there's no follow up to it. Like nothing else is like it in the film.
Right.
It's sort of like if you are stoned and you're watching the film and you're like, wait, what was that? What's going on? Like what happened? Like what? Anyway.
So I like the fact that it's taken us 31 minutes before we've even talked about the musical performances in the film.
Right.
I know.
And it's a huge part of the film, and it's what's kind of amazing to me, being able to see the Beatles in a cinematic form, where good picture, good sound, everything, and it really sort of like displays their talent. Obviously, obviously something. It's the most obvious statement, but it's just like right from the beginning, of the film that opens up with the title track, obviously "Help," and it's incredible. Like obviously, it's a great song. We all know it. But seeing it in living color like that in a way like really kind of took my breath away a little bit because, seeing it in that way, in such a big cinematic way, and especially how it's shot, it's just like it just makes you reappreciate the songwriting ability, the melodies, everything. It makes you see it, hear it. And
it's like a CinemaScope
Yeah.
rendering of all this great music that and you're
great.
seeing it. And the boys are like right there. There's a couple things. Maybe we could walk through the songs a little bit. So it does start with Help. Now, another interesting thing, again, that I'm trying to make that distinction, 64 to 65, John was smoking a lot of weed. He's really into Bob Dylan. And one of the, we all know where John wound up with a lot of like confessional stuff, painful stuff, kind of sour, heavy stuff. He goes there kind of guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just all this stuff, But this is the very first kernels. Literally, the first song is "I'm a Loser" from the '65 album "Beatles for Sale." Like it's not talking about like, "Hey, girl, I want to hold your hand." It's like, "I'm a loser and I'm not what I appear to be." Like, what's that? And then, I'm just getting to Help. So Help is funny because they decided to call the film Help, and then John and Paul do quickly write a song called Help. But then John sort of had something, and it was slower, and he they had to speed it up to make it like the film's title song, but if you listen to the lyrics, it's like it's like I'm dying here, and he's like screaming like
It's like
someone
a suicide. It's like a
help me
suicide
emotionally
song.
Yeah.
Right.
Total side note.
Yeah.
Total side note. My friend pointed this thing out to me. This is the music part of it. It's very weird. You ever notice the first part of Help, the music is never repeated. The part "Help, I need somebody."
Oh, yeah,
help,
yeah,
not
yeah,
just
yeah.
anybody, help, and that's it. It never returns.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
So brilliant.
So cool.
Anyway.
They put the
but anyway-
middle eight at the beginning or whatever.
No, right.
I know, right?
But
Anyway, so this is him outside of the fun. Like the movie's fun, but there's a couple sort of sour ball John moments which are so great and influenced by Dylan, but also him wanting to grow as a creative person. And
Yeah.
had a lot of feeling in it.
yeah, and
Right,
it's,
because Dylan said like you've got great songs. Like he liked the Beatles. He's like you got great songs, but they're not about anything, and that really stuck with John.
I
It's like,
bet.
oh, well.
yeah,
Sure.
And that song, like, it is about like, a lifeline. Like, I'm going to kill
so
myself. Come here, help me.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And then a shout out to just how that's filmed, because obviously a lot of people have said, this film inspired sort of, this is one of the main things that influenced the music video as we know it, type thing.
Absolutely.
And you really
Godfather,
see
the music video.
and you
they
see
say
it here. And the way it's rendered too, just this extreme depth of field that you're seeing, like sharp out of focus.
The zoom lens is pretty new around that.
Maybe
time,
that's what it
right?
was.
So like I think like shooting far away and there's almost shooting through. So you do see that.
It's
like,
super
there's
cool.
like trees in the frame and then
Yeah.
they shoot through it kind of thing.
So
Yeah.
super cool. Love that. Then I have to mention, and we'll get to the other songs, but just because it pairs with the opening. Does anybody know how they're like, okay, we're doing a movie, we're doing a second film, we're gonna open it up with ritual sacrifice. Do you know how that?
No, I know.
Do you know how that?
Here's another element.
Okay.
The same production company that made Help did the James Bond films.
Yes. Right,
So if you had never heard of any of the James Bond films, especially the '60s ones, you'd be like missing really it's really a parody of James. Like there's this other thing that this is, which is simply a James Bond movie parody.
Sure.
So that's how this film. Like you would have like exotic world locations and exotic villains. Goldfinger.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not that well versed in '60s Bond, but I know enough where I can see like there's all that
hear
stuff.
The theme song, right? I mean, you hear
Right,
hits of the soundtrack of the James Bond soundtrack is in the film.
Yeah, they're doing a pastiche of it.
Right.
And again, it's okay because
They own it.
United Artists or something.
Yeah, they
It's
own
like
it.
the same company, so it's a cross promotion kind of. So
weird.
that's really that's the kernel of where all that comes from.
Right.
It's basically a hairy old corny James Bond plot.
Yeah. There was also like Brian Epstein said it has to be shot in the Bahamas. So
because it's a
think there was some
British-owned territory, so they probably got a
Something,
tax situation there.
tax reasons.
Well, but the boys wanted to go too.
Yeah.
They wanted to go where they did say the boys were like, we want to go where we haven't gone, and
Yeah.
they hadn't gone to the Alps, and they hadn't
Right.
gone to a place like the Bahamas.
And they didn't want to do another fictionalized documentary, like Hard Day's Night. They wanted
Sure.
to do something else. And then I think they said that if they did like a real documentary at that time, it would have been too like X-rated for like the screen, for like 1965.
Oh, I've heard
screen.
Ringo had a lot of orgies. Like, thank you. Thanks. Perfect drop. Just like rehearsal. That was perfect. No, because he has this whole confessional about all the Ringo orgies that were. He was on Howard Stern, because I think he indulged more than the other three. He was like, "Oh man, let's get it on."
Oh my god!
Ringo's in the building.
What was that when we did was it El Topo or something and
George Harrison.
Yeah, when they were gonna do they were gonna put him in Holy Mountain, but of course they wouldn't show their assholes or something for Holy Mountain. So
yes, the exposed anus clause of Beatles contract. All right. Anyway, so well, we were talking about the songs and like
I think I think the next one is You're Gonna Lose That Girl. I think is this.
it's
beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that is beautiful too. That's I guess
Boys, are you buzzing?
Yeah.
Right. But no, it's so beautiful because there's all this like weird refracted light. Like there's a part where on the left of the frame, Ringo's playing the bongos, and like there's all this distorted light.
Oh, it's
and
beautiful.
I guess it's Paul in the distance in another control booth or something.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I noticed is it's like all the famous Beatles songs, right? And they're so great.
Yeah.
And they're famous. They're extra famous.
Extra
'cause they're
famous,
so
yeah.
particularly great. But I can't get You're Gonna Lose That Girl out of my head. You're Gonna Lose That Girl.
Yeah.
It's so good, but it's
one
kind
of the most. It's probably the most like for me. It might be my favorite musical section of the film in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously the next one's great too, but
It's got that sweet guitar solo.
it's great.
No, I know. And actually, we'll get to it, but actually the song that made me think like Jesus Christ, even a song that's lesser, that's like less talked about, that's on the C list of like
I know.
classic notable Beatles, is Another Girl. That song kills me.
Oh,
Like,
totally.
Another girl, another friend to the end. It's like, what the
it's so
fuck,
good.
dude? That's like, that's like some other little thing we did, but like that's not the
Right.
single. It's like, oh my god, dude.
I know.
Like there's no duds. Is all.
It's an
They said
abundance.
and sometimes a lot of times the songs weren't ready until like the day before the shoot. So you'd
That's
have to like do a lot of
crazy.
improv in the moment. And on You're Gonna Lose That Girl. It's like just broadly this film, like he invented so many techniques that people would use in music videos.
Totally.
There's famous music video directors that have done like 300 music videos that are like, I was basically just ripping off Help, in my early days or whatever.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so, I mean, it was like a big, everyone was inspired by this film. But I mean, he's got the lighting is so beautiful, the glints, the reflections on the glass.
Yep.
The mic is in focus, but the singer's out of
Yeah,
focus.
beautiful,
Like,
beautiful touch.
rim lights on the shadowy face, and then there's like colored lights in the background that are like purple, or in the next shot it's green, the next shot it's blue. You know, it's like
Great.
And well,
so many
Marcus,
ideas into each shot, into each scene. You know, just like a million wonderful ideas that paid off into each scene.
Well, we were talking about this, Marcus. I can't remember. It was before we did the show. Just that one of the practices that they had, and this shows you just how alive and creative this film is, and what an alive, creative time this was. But Lester and his crew would take a frame for every shot. And they would run gels over the frame of every shot and go, how about 30% cyan over this one? Or how about a bolder blue over this one? Every shot of the film. It's like,
Into
it's so
the entire
creative.
movie,
Yeah, every part of the film has some kind of color gel on it. It's amazing. And then lastly, what you're saying, Marcus, too, is like, I'm just really into the composition of it all, like the considered composition, you know, and the thing is, it's like, a lot of times people consider like, oh, a band is performing, so let's just basically document the performing on the stage. You know what I mean? Right. And even somewhat that's Hard Day's Night, relatively speaking. But this one is wild. It's like, no, like have the camera on the fretboard, you know.
Oh,
and like,
yeah.
and then have John, like have them in a row. John's in the front. His guitar is this way.
Yeah.
Paul's guitar is that way.
Right.
You know, and it's
Aesthetics,
just like, and then within those compositions, there's fast cutting that's rhythmic to the song and is lively and complements and builds on the previous compositional cut. And then I want to note one little thing in the playfulness of all of it. There were a row in the ski scene. There were a row of I guess ski lights. What are those called?
Torches?
No, the lines. For the ski trams, what are those called?
The ski lifts?
Ski lifts. So there were ski lift lights, and they liked the shot, but those ski lift lines were in the way.
Oh, yeah.
And so then Richard Lester goes, hey, let's just make them musical notations that pop up in a quick animation that go across the like the 5 vertical lines. For the, like, what the fuck, dude?
That's a
so
all
cool.
I'm saying.
So cool. Yeah.
A little anecdote just to talk about how influential this movie truly was. Like one time I was talking to Francis Ford Coppola, and I brought up Richard Lester, you know, as you would, you know.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I asked him, you know, if he had any stories about him. He did go to meet him when he was older and to tell him like how much he loved his movies and stuff, and to thank, you know, when he was older, like in life, he went to England and met with him. I was like, really? Did you feel personally inspired by his movies? He said, oh yeah, everybody was. Those Beatles movies, they hit everybody, you know, everyone felt really inspired by them. So,
Wow.
another one, you know, the guy that's in the same field as like Antonioni, you know, Richard Lester. There you go.
Right.
But you don't hear about that often. I feel like, you know, like you hear about Kenneth Anger, of course, you know, with Scorsese and you know, hear about this other stuff.
The
But
Beatles might outshine Richard Lester. Like,
true.
You know.
Yeah, there's that. Also, it's just so like, you know how like a fish doesn't know what water is,
right?
Because that's what is it's
right.
just water. So I think the Beatles are so just steeped culturally, you know, that it's just like yeah, the Beatles, of course, and the Beatles movies. I got a side note though. I want to make sure we get into the show here. Kind of running out of time, is that there's an amazing thing that happens in the 64 to 65 to 66 progress of the Beatles. Right here in Help, there's the scene at the Indian restaurant. There's a little band playing while
sitar, right?
And then a couple months later is the premiere of George on a sitar.
Yep.
Right.
On Norwegian Wood, incredible song.
Yep.
Rubber Soul.
Yep.
And it's because he was zoning out, like, hey, that guy's playing that funny thing over there. You know, they're shooting, you know, in the restaurant, and it's like, wow, like that could have not happened.
I know.
It is weird because the sitar's like, if the synthesizer is like the defining instrument of the, you know, the 80s or whatever, the sitar's really up there for the 60s.
And it's because I mean, there might have been another avenue to get interest in sitars, but maybe not.
Maybe not.
It's like, it's in them waiting, stoned in this stupid restaurant scene,
Yeah.
and they look over and the guy's going, doing,
Right.
Yeah.
and George is like, oh, you gotta fuck with that. And the rest is history. And then you got Norwegian Wood, and then like a year later you got Love You Too, which is so badass on Revolver.
Yep.
You know,
And then Tomorrow Never Knows. We gotta talk about amazing performance of You Gotta Hide Your Love Away. I mean, that's a big standout in this film. You know,
The Eddie Vedder song. I'll never
Did he
forgive
do
him
it?
for doing
Did he do it?
Covered it. It's like one of those songs you hear at a coffee shop or something.
Let's pretend that didn't happen.
You never had your
Can I just give you a quick indication of
Yeah, sorry.
there's something about that song. Just want to point out, like from my childhood, John Lennon was killed 1980. I'm a little kid, and I do have an interest in the Beatles, and I liked Help. But what happened is, so he's killed, and they were showing Help a lot after Lennon was murdered in 80. But then they had this weird thing on not public, but on local television, like Channel 5, Channel 11. One of those stations would just play the You Got to Hide Your Love Away
As like a music video.
in its entirety as
Right.
like between commercials.
That's so cool.
Like weeks after his murder, and it would just say like 1940, 1980
Wow.
at the end. And I'm like, I have such a very vividly emotional experience with that scene, but it's also objectively a great scene. Very Dylan influenced song, very different than even a year before. People wouldn't have imagined a song that sounds and feels like that and has so much heart.
Totally. No way.
64, and there he is.
No.
And it's a testament to, John, people go back and forth with John, he was murdered, so he's kind of like a legend in that way. But John was a super force, because Paul is, especially these days, been really considered as such a genius, musically,
Right.
in his post-Beatles career. But John, like when John's good, it's like as good as it gets. Nowhere Man. and this
Totally.
song,
Nowhere Man.
and In My Life, it's like, in a way, this is my favorite John, is 65 John.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
It's great.
He was still sort of band leader then, and things started to switch over. A little bit, where Paul got to be control.
Yeah.
I love in that scene too when they're singing to Eleanor or but I forget what her name is in the movie.
Eleanor Braun? Oh,
yeah.
By the way, her first name
Is
Eleanor.
is-
Guess what that influenced?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I told you not to take all the good anecdotes, Tom. You just interrupted me. I
don't know. Was that a good one?
You stole my punchline. Like in the middle of an anecdote here, but
Oh
okay,
my
so anyway.
God. What are we going to do?
Anyway, I got nothing. But yeah, they're singing to her. It's nice moment.
Yeah.
But also,
Supposedly she had an affair with John. Supposedly.
Oh, shit.
she's great. You know what? She appeared in Bedazzled a couple years later,
Right.
Which is the kind of great, really fun, like swinging '60s movie that is very, very Help influenced. But yeah, I like her.
I guess she's an Absolutely Fabulous too, which I have to go back and look for.
Oh, wow. I grew up with that shit. So you mentioned it, but it's a great set piece in the film. Obviously, you have their sort of Pee-wee's Playhouse, home they all live in, with all the cool fixtures of everything, pretty crazy. But then there's the great scene where, of course, Paul gets injected with the whatever makes him tiny. And there's tiny naked Paul running around.
Tiny naked Paul wrapping a Wrigley's spirit gum around his nude body and like trying to duck out of all that soda that's hitting me.
Yeah,
I'm
and
gonna duck out in the ashtray.
Yeah, right.
I know.
That's kind of a big peaking moment for the film. I feel like it really kind of I don't know. It's where they kind of got off axis and they got a little more experimental with a set piece, not just in the music, but in the story.
I've got one for you. No, totally. Right when he's shrunk, and then the bad guys knock at the door, they all quickly figure out how to hide. Like, let's hide, right?
Right, totally.
So one Beatles on either side of the door, hiding, waiting for the guy to come in through the door. But then I think it's John's solution to hide is just to lie flat on the floor and put his head under the bed. But then otherwise his body's just sort of, he's like planking.
Like ostrich.
Yeah, planking. Yeah,
He's like it's like proto planking, not
Totally.
protoplasm.
Yeah.
No, so I was like, no, that's it's so subtle.
And everyone's like the way they're knocking on the windows outside. It's like 10 people on each one. Each have a window. And they're all like knocking, kind of like
and that's trippy too.
unsettling
Yeah,
and weird.
that night of the assault in their place is
great.
very special.
Great.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And just to shout out to little details, and this is a testament, I think, to Lester, is Paul has, of course, in his part of their apartment, or flat, big pipe organ. But instead of sheet music,
Yeah, the comics.
Superman comics.
Yeah. Jimmy
And it's just like
Olsen and
that's
the comic.
it's just such a nice touch. Like
Which
they could have
is-
easily not done that.
Yeah.
But it's very stoner. Like,
Yeah.
hey, what you reading the sheet music? And it's like, oh, it's Jimmy Olsen.
Jimmy
Kind of
Olsen.
weird because Richard Lester would go on to direct those Superman movies.
Yeah,
in the
that's
late-
right.
in the late
That's right.
70s.
That's right. Superman 2 and 3. Yeah. So that's cool. Obviously, another big. I think the set piece, like another just one everyone remembers, even if they claim they haven't seen the film, is the whole Ticket to Ride. In the Alps with the skiing and everything.
I know.
So iconic. Is that?
Well, it's like the art of the album cover and stuff.
Yeah,
I
and
guess they didn't know how to ski. And
shows.
Richard Lester's like, do you know how to ski? And he's like, no. He's like, okay, don't do it yet. Just learn on the slopes. And then they shot them learning how to
Great
ski. And
idea.
if there was something that looked good, looked funny or whatever, they would just embellish it. and
oh,
shoot it.
that's great. That's great.
Yeah, and they shot like 8 hours, and they just like lip sync the song over and over again. And then the very talented editor, like Lester just gave the editor like the raw footage, and he cut it together. And that is maybe the most proto music video editing.
It is. Yeah, for sure.
Because it happens in other scenes too, like Another Girl's great, but it's just like it's very strong in the ski. Because also the ski thing is an interesting environment because it's all that white, and then like the thing, the band is punctuated by being in that pure like background of white and stuff like that. And also they're kind of uniform. They all look the same. It's that Beatles where it's just like they're all sort of still dressing the same. In that way that Devo, like as my friend pointed out years ago, like if you're in Devo, you all have to get the 5 things.
Yeah.
Like everyone wears the 5, and they're still almost in that period. It's shifting now in '65.
And they all have the same scarf, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
long
that kind of
scarf.
But what's
Yes.
cool though about that, but what's cool about that is this is a transitionary moment for them away from the suits. I mean, the beginning of the film, they're wearing
Right.
the suits,
Right.
and then you start
Yeah.
to see them in casual clothes. I think that
Dude,
is
they're
for
in
Another
denim.
Girl. Yeah, they're
I
in
know.
denim.
I want that.
Yeah, they're in
I'm gonna
denim. It's so
steal
weird
that
to
look.
Yeah, that's a great denim look.
Yeah,
like
it
I
is.
love that. Oh, I got another little.
Gorgeous
If we're just
look.
Yeah.
we're just running through like little few moments, this totally trippy moment that couldn't have been anticipated and wasn't trippy in '65, but became trippy later, is when they're all in disguise at the airport.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
going to say that.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's
That's,
go.
That to me, I was going to mention it earlier. I was going to mention that earlier because
Let's go.
Because Beatles. I was mentioning, for those not familiar, the sort of truncated timeline of the Beatles. Everything moves very fast in Beatles world, but it's so crazy and trippy to see in that scene in the airport where they're in disguise. That's essentially forecasting what they would look like in 3 years, 2 years.
Yeah, no, totally. It's like John has a huge, like,
has, like, the-
two virgins beard.
Yeah, yeah.
Or whatever.
The Hey
Like,
Jude album cover.
the Hey Jude beard, huge beard. No, but then Ringo has like a sporty goatee.
I know.
It's like,
It's
and
amazing.
it's a goofy disguise. Like basically, they're wearing a goofy disguise that in 2-3 years will be what they look like.
Maybe that's proof of the Beatles simulation that this is really a Matrix thing.
Matrix?
That,
Definitely.
That they traveled back in time. Maybe that
of
is what happened with the Beatles. And that's
Well, they all
proof.
died, and they. Well, Paul's dead, dude.
Oh, right. Yeah,
He is,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Replaced by Billy Shears.
all right, Billy Shears. My little favorite, it's a very short little moment that was like, okay, because there are visual surprises in this film where it does feel very trippy, little Jodorowsky-ian, if you will. Right off the heels of that Ticket to Ride music video, you see the main bad guy, Clang or whatever his name is, and you see him just with the giant flamethrower in the
I know. I noticed
in the
that.
slopes, and
He's
it's
kind of like, fuck, and he just unloads. Like,
that was pretty
what
cool.
is that?
Pretty trippy. I was like, whoa.
I see that, and I counter you with the terrifying snowman.
Yeah, totally.
Disguise.
Yeah.
Terrifying snowman's
Yeah.
great.
Also weird. Yeah, totally insane. And then you have the just the big set piece with the tanks, and the rocket launchers and stuff. That's just shit's really going off the rails at that point.
Now, one thing,
film.
I just rewatching this today, and like, I think I texted you guys, but like, red is the color of this film.
Yeah.
And often I was reminded of mid '60s Godard, the use of color.
Like purely faux.
Yeah, Pierre Defoe,
Yeah.
for example,
Go
especially.
to the window.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like red was really prominent, and the one really red that gets me. Well, first of all, like red has to happen thematically because in the narrative, the sacrifice victim is doused in red.
It's a really cool idea.
And the ring.
Yes.
Yeah, the ring. It's cool.
Yeah, well, the ring itself is a huge ring.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
point. I
yeah.
can think of that.
Whoa.
No, but the one that kills me, that's part of like an almost like Airplane, 1980 Airplane, the movie.
It's very Airplane.
Like surreal sight gag is like they're at Scotland Yard having a meeting, and then one arrow, boom, delivers a balloon full of red
Yes,
paint.
and then the next-
And then boom, second arrow explodes the red. And suddenly there's this explosion of red, and it's like kind of looks like blood, and it's just like, what is this, deep end? You know,
Yeah,
like,
right.
That phone call, like forcing you to go to the window, always scared me as a kid. That you could get like hypnotized.
Yeah.
Like, someone could hypnotize you that way.
Yeah, and there's also the scene with Ringo where he gets doused in the red paint during that fight we talked about.
There's a few scenes. Yeah.
in
Oh,
that-
Crying.
when they're invading the Beatles headquarters.
yeah, the straw dogs scene of Help.
yeah, exactly. And then let's not forget one of the craziest. Again, this is kind of Jodorowskian too. Is when there's a scene when the bad guys' whole plot to capture the Beatles is we're going to take those 2 feet, and douse it in red paint.
And what, douse it in what color paint?
Yeah, red paint.
Right. And so they're following like
hot red.
footprints of red, hot red,
Really
like
hot
along
red.
like a gray wall in the ground, and stuff like
Electric
that.
red.
And it's weird because it sort of looks like Godard meets Scooby Doo.
It does.
If that makes any sense.
It is a little
Makes sense over here.
Scooby-Doo-ish. Yeah, totally.
Well, the plot contrivance is
Yeah,
Scooby Doo. Like,
for
the
sure.
bad guys are going to get us, but like it looks, so hot and like pop art house
Yeah.
filmmaking. That fusion is beautiful. And so, and then there's this. We were talking about this, Marcus, the surrealism of those weird, terrible Ringo masks that they're being taken off, which is very Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
yeah. It's weird.
Kind of scary
that.
looking.
I like this. There's the other subplot with the 2 scientists that are trying to get the ring because it's like this made out of the supersonic metal or something.
Yep.
And it's with Victor Spinetti's one of them, and he's also in a Magical Mystery Tour. He's in A Hard Day's Night. I don't know what the story is there exactly.
They were a fan of his, and and like John was like, or no, Paul maybe, I don't remember. It's like, my mom will only go to our movies if you're in them, Vincent. Or Victor,
That's amazing.
is
I love
because-
they pull out the slow motion laser, and they all go into slow mo.
Oh,
Dude.
But once that's done and the power goes out, the fuse blows, and they run by, and then Paul's got that line where it's like, "It is a relativity condenser."
Yeah,
or whatever.
right.
Like he knows what it is already.
yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
That made me laugh. And that whole scene where they hook Ringo up to that thing, and they got the
Dude,
What
I
is
know.
what? They're doing the optical effects, with the thing.
Yeah,
and it's fun.
solarization.
Yeah,
that looks
solarization,
like,
yeah.
you know what that looks like? Fucking 200 motels.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
also is kind of like,
Yeah.
see, here's what I'm
The
saying. It's
Muppet
like,
movie
it is,
does the scene like that too.
Oh yeah.
Which one?
The Muppets. The Muppets. The
Muppet movie.
okay. But like, it's like so often, like the scene where there's slow motion, it's like, it's not funny, like a joke, haha, but it certainly is amusing if you're like stoned and like things like
Totally.
now everybody's slow for a second.
Totally.
Like now Paul is shrunk down and now people
Yeah.
are slow and like it's just so divorced from reality.
It's kind of like interesting because I bet obviously they grew up in the television generation. Like when the dawn of TV is sort of happening, and it's kind of interesting. Or it's like if even though they just started smoking weed at that time. It's like, you would have maybe watched some of those things high in rerun.
the Goon Show.
The Goon Show, sure. Okay, so you're watching that, but then it's like
And
now
they were
we're
on
gonna-
amphetamines, remember?
Yeah, no, but totally. But what I'm trying to say is like, what I'm trying to say is like, this may be some of the earliest of like, let's create our own stoner TV, in a weird way,
I got
And
you.
it's-
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't quite
Yeah.
line up with the timeline, but that's kind of what that's like. Seems like the approach in a lot of ways.
It's just very early. Well, I've got one for you. That's another little like small favorite thing of mine. They do that kind of joke that you have seen subsequently, which is people start saying something. I don't remember what they're saying, but like people are like, no, people are singing Mozart. No, people are singing the Beethoven, right? And it's like
Yes.
a few of them are singing the Beethoven,
Yeah.
and then suddenly
It's a
the whole
huge
room
audience.
is singing Beethoven,
Yeah.
and then suddenly an entire soccer stadium singing Beethoven, and they keep cutting away to like exponentially larger locations.
That's pretty
of
Monty
people.
Python. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very Python.
It does all feel
Yeah.
like skit comedy, and TV specific. Like
Mr.
TV would do
Show.
that fast motion type thing. Like I can't, I'm sure they were doing that Beverly Hillbillies style fast motion and like British comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy stuff. I mean, there's so much, there's so much other, good tracks in this as well. We didn't talk about I Need You, The Night Before, Another Girl.
They're all so great.
My
So it's a
dad's
great
band
album.
was The Night Before. Just had to shout out to my dad, who's in terms
Shout
of
out
the
to
Beatles.
Marcus's
His
dad.
band was called The Night Before.
Oh, that's cool. That's
a cool name.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice.
I got one little tidbit, and it's the last moment of the movie, and this is the indicator to me, like this is a stoner, vibey thing. How does this film end? It ends with them like singing gibberish along to what is it? The Barber of Seville. What's like no.
Oh, yeah, right.
I want that, by the way, whatever
Yeah.
that is. But you're hearing that, and it's like, and it's like very silly take on classical music. But what you're seeing are these cool, what is that like? Bugs Eye. Marcus, help me out here.
Well,
that
they're shooting through the
filter?
diamond. They're shooting through the ring. It's a it's
Oh, the ring. Yeah,
Kaleidoscopic.
yeah, right.
Kaleidoscopes of like everyone goofing around, John and
Yeah.
Ringo and George looking very cool with his top hat, and it's just like what I'm trying to say is like that's the note you end on with your film, like
Yeah.
zony, trippy.
Yeah.
And that's Help. Love it.
Boom. All right, everybody. That was it. 1 fucking hour on Help.
So
Yeah. Lot of fun.
I bet
Interesting.
nobody saw that coming.
Nobody saw that coming.
Like there's
No.
there's not a lot of disembowelments in this film.
Yeah.
And,
I
There's a lot of
know.
attempts at disembowelment.
Psychic pain. It's
Yeah.
true.
There's
Good
no
point.
like
No, it's
familial
like-
trauma.
like psychic
or-
trauma and
yeah.
pain.
Or like
and
or like
gross
90s
outs.
or like
Yeah, and, like-
cringe. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I know it's refreshing.
It's pretty wholesome.
It's wholesome.
for,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Very fun to do. As I mentioned during the plug for the Patreon at the start of the show, we are going to do a bonus ep. We'll do a Beatles bonus ep for everybody.
Let me give a teaser.
Sure.
So we're going to do a show and tell, materials in hand, but also we're going to listen, maybe look at some stuff.
Yeah.
But just here's an example of the kind of thing we're going to be rocking out with. I've got this weird.
yeah.
So you know the Butcher cover,
Yeah.
the Beatles' infamous LP.
Hold it back a little bit farther.
There's the
Yeah,
Butcher
there you go.
cover. Well, sorry, there's the Butcher cover, but there's this weird 1976 issue of some of their 1966 songs on a 45.
Yeah.
And they've reused the Butcher cover. So there's a weird,
That's weird.
like vintage Butcher cover 45.
You know,
so
I-
that kind of
Drunken.
thing.
I'm cheating a little bit, but immediately within the first 10 minutes of watching Help, I was like, okay, now I understand why we got the Butcher cover. Like after
Dude,
this,
totally.
I was like, okay, I get it now. Because before I didn't quite get it. Now it's like this gets you to the Butcher cover. I feel like in a lot of ways.
100%.
If that makes
They
sense.
would, yeah. It's a child of the where the heads are at Help. It's true. It's funny. I was researching 66 a little bit. 66 things got so gnarly, and that's when it really is reflected in the Butcher cover. But that's when John makes that quote.
Yeah.
That. And by the way, he wasn't being misunderstood. He was like, I think Christianity's going to like phase out.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
It was controversial to say that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my God.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah,
I don't
who
care. But if you're a
cares?
Christian,
Yeah.
it's pretty edgy. So like,
Yeah.
this was the last time, the last innocent year is 65
Yeah,
too, which is
sure.
kind of a sweet thing.
they tried to cancel him.
Yeah, right. John Lennon canceled. All right. So let's talk about next week. I'm very excited about this because we got a special guest coming to the show next week. A friend of ours, a friend of mine for well over 10 years now. We're going to be having Austin, Texas's own Brian Connolly on the show, former of Vulcan Video, of course, people might know.
Live long and prosper.
I mean, shout out. We got to maybe play his Jimmy Kimmel segment, when he's on.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he was on Jimmy Kimmel. Anyway, so Brian Connolly is a good friend of ours. He used to manage the Vulcan Video in Austin, Texas. Good buddy of ours. And we basically said, pick whatever film you want, Brian. We just want to get you on the show. And his pick, I had no notes on because I was like, holy shit, this is pretty demented for us to cover this as our first Steven Spielberg film that we'll be covering on this channel. So take 5 seconds to think about what that might be, because it's not
probably our only Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I'm kidding.
No,
It's not Minority Report.
Yeah, it's not Minority Report. It's going to be next week, 1 fucking hour on 1941. So get ready.
Strap in.
For
Get
that
ready.
shit.
And we're trying to time it for December 7th-ish.
Which is
because of the
Pearl Harbor
D-Day anniversary.
They will live in infamy.
Brian's great. Brian's the kind of guy, I'd known him for years myself. It's just, for some reason, he and I started talking about Jerry Lewis.
Oh.
Like deep, hard, ugly, insane Jerry Lewis stuff. And I would see him, and the only thing he'd ever bring up to me is like, dude, did you see that Monopoly TV commercial Jerry did in 76? And I'm like, dude, I know. Right? We've never talked about anything else.
Yeah, he
but I like that.
He thought we were in our cracking up episode. He thought we were too mean to cracking up. He thought I'm sure we'll ask him about it. But
Interesting.
He thought we were a little too hard on cracking up.
Who else is talking about cracking up?
I know.
No, but he's one of those.
He loves
too. He's too in there. He's too inside.
He's very inside. So
you got to take a step back. It's not good stuff.
I love it. This is why I love Brian. So
Yeah,
Brian,
exactly. Same here.
Brian is Connolly coming on the show. Excited for you guys to meet Brian. Hopefully he does many more with us. And we're going to do 1941, of course, for the Pearl Harbor anniversary. And it's a great look. And right, exactly. And guys, have a great Thanksgiving. Hope you enjoy that with your families. And
and with our partners Disney Plus,
yes,
make sure to tune in.
Yes,
to Beatles 64 this Friday.
That's right.
After Thanksgiving,
maybe
and
throw
check it
help
out.
on with your family. I rewatched it with a room full of kids just last night. They loved it.
Perfect.
That is very cool to hear that. Actually,
that's really cool.
You know what heartens me? I got to say about the Beatles, because this is the first time we ever talked about them on the show.
Okay,
is T-shirts, band T-shirts come and go. You know. But it heartens me to always, because you're always going to see this 13-year-old kids.
They love the Beatles
with Beatles T-shirts.
Yeah.
And it's just like, God damn, that's fucking awesome.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It's great.
Like it's just reoccurring. And endless. Appreciation for them.
Well, I have to cheat you one last thing about this movie. It makes me wish that every band had one. And I think I mentioned this because that movie made my top 10 lists of all time. Remember when
That's right. Episode? Shout out. That's right. Yeah.
Help was on there, but it makes me wish that every band had this. Like, I wish Black Sabbath.
Oh, I was just about to say
Help.
I wish it would have been a Scooby-Doo-ish thing, but I wish Sabbath had a film. That would have been awesome.
Man.
From like 1971, I wish, like Master Reality era.
At the worst, 73.
Yeah.
71, 73.
78 too, I'd take also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Give me like Ozzy's about to split. And, Never Say Die.
Yeah,
the movie.
Some other bands got like Slade has one. I mean, Led Zeppelin kind of has one. No, Sex Pistols kind of have one, but it's like, no, I wish every band, it should have just been standard. You have to do a movie.
Yeah, interesting. That would have been wild. All right, so I think it's time to get out of here. One more quick shout out to the One Fucking Hour Patreon. Patreon.com/one fucking hour. Get up there if you want the bonus ep, especially our Beatles bonus ep. And we'll catch you next week for 1941, y'all. But we can't leave you without your Momen of Zen. Speaking of cracking up. There you
go.
And we'll see you guys. All right, take care for now, and happy Thanksgiving. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
The Beatles, the Beatles, the Beatles, the Beatles. Yeah.